Number 15. The disappearance of Ettore Majorana. Ettore Majorana was once a name known only to those invested in theoretical physics, but he has since become a well-known figure to those invested in the mysterious and unexplained. Born in 1906 in Catania, Sicily, Majorana seemed destined for greatness in the realm of science. By his early 30s, he had already carved out a reputation as one of the brightest minds in physics, working on neutrino masses and unraveling the complexities of atomic spectroscopy. Yet it wasn't his scientific achievements that many remember, but his inexplicable disappearance in 1938. On March 25th of that year, Majorana purchased a ticket for a ship voyage from Palermo to Naples. It was a routine trip, or so it seemed. He was expected to return to his work at the University of Naples, where he had recently secured a position as a professor of theoretical physics. However, Majorana never completed the journey. Instead, he vanished into thin air. Majorana was not just another physicist. He was a genius in a league of his own. Enrico Fermi, one of the most influential physicists of the 20th century, once remarked, "There are several categories of scientists in the world, but then there are the geniuses, like Galileo and Newton. Majorana was one of these." Majorana's contributions to the field were profound and included the Majorana equation and the prediction of particles, later confirmed to exist, known as Majorana fermions. Despite his brilliance, Majorana was known for his modesty, often considering his groundbreaking work to be merely banal. As Majorana prepared for his ill-fated final journey, he left behind a letter addressed to Antonio Corelli, the director of the Naples Physics Institute. The note was somber and cryptic, suggesting a premeditated departure. "Dear Corelli, I made the decision that has become unavoidable. There isn't a bit of selfishness in it, but I realize what trouble my sudden disappearance will cause you and the students. For this as well, I beg your forgiveness, but especially for betraying the trust, the sincere friendship, and the sympathy you gave me over the past months." Soon after, Majorana sent a telegram retracting his travel plans, yet proceeded to board the ship from Palermo anyway. He was never seen again. The note hinted at a profound internal struggle, with Majorana writing vaguely, "I ask you to remember me to all those I learned to know and appreciate in your institute. I will keep a fond memory of them all, at least until 11 p.m. tonight, possibly later too." This note of finality deepened the mystery. Over the years, numerous theories have emerged to explain Majorana's disappearance. Some speculate that he took his own life, unable to cope with the immense pressure and expectations of his work. Others believe he may have chosen to disappear voluntarily, seeking solitude in a monastery or adopting a new identity in South America. Indeed, there were reports and supposed sightings of Majorana in Argentina and Venezuela in the years following World War II, but none were definitively confirmed. The intrigue surrounding Majorana's fate was further fueled by his work with prominent physicists like Werner Heisenberg and Niels Bohr, and his pivotal role in early nuclear research. Could his disappearance have been related to the nascent atomic bomb projects? Some even theorized kidnapping or murder to prevent his participation in atomic weapon development. The mystery was compounded by the fact that Majorana withdrew all his money from the bank shortly before his disappearance, suggesting a planned and deliberate act. In March 2011, the Rome Attorney's Office reopened the case, prompted by new witness statements and the discovery of a photograph taken in Argentina in 1955. Analysis of the photograph suggested a strong resemblance to Majorana, leading investigators to conclude that he might have lived in South America subsequent to his disappearance from Italy. By February 2015, the office declared the case officially closed, citing evidence that Majorana had been alive between 1955 and 1959, living in Valencia, Venezuela. They found no criminal evidence related to his disappearance, indicating it was likely a personal choice. Despite the official closure, the mystery of Ettore Majorana remains. His disappearance is not just a tale of a missing person, but a narrative of a brilliant mind grappling with the weight of genius, and perhaps an attempt to find peace in anonymity. Number 14. Suzanne Morphew. The morning of May 10, 2020, dawned clear in Salida, Colorado. Barry Morphew left early for a job site 150 miles away in Broomfield, leaving his wife Suzanne behind. Suzanne, an avid cyclist, was known to take her mountain bike out on the rugged trails surrounding their home. That Mother's Day, however, she did not respond to her daughter's text wishing her well. Concern grew as hours passed without a word from her. After being alerted by his daughters, Barry called a neighbor to check on Suzanne. When they found neither her nor her bike at home, panic started to set in, and the police were called. The Chaffee County Sheriff's Office mobilized swiftly, and soon a search began. Suzanne's bike was discovered at the bottom of a steep cliff. Her helmet was found a mile away. Investigators found no signs of a struggle, no blood, no torn clothing, leading them to suspect that the scene might have been staged. Surveillance footage from the days surrounding Suzanne's disappearance added some suspicion. On his trip to Broomfield, Barry was captured on multiple cameras disposing of trash at various locations. He claimed he frequently used public bins to avoid landfill fees, but this explanation didn't quell the investigators' suspicions. Moreover, the unusual activity recorded by his truck's computer showed movements inconsistent with his alibi. In the ensuing days, Suzanne's disappearance drew national attention. Search teams combed the rugged terrain, divers plunged into local waterways, and volunteers joined the effort. But Suzanne remained missing. As investigators delved deeper, a series of text messages painted a bleak picture of the Morphews' marriage. Suzanne's text to a close friend revealed her growing fear and dissatisfaction with Barry, culminating in a message just days before she vanished. "I'm done. We just need to figure this out civilly." A crucial breakthrough came when a spy pen, discovered in the Morphews' bedroom closet, revealed recorded conversations between Suzanne and a secret lover. This identified lover provided an alibi that investigators confirmed, clearing him of suspicion. However, the revelation of Suzanne's affair added a possible motive for Barry, who continued to vehemently deny any involvement in her disappearance. As the investigation progressed, further scrutiny fell on Barry. Scratch marks on his arm, visible in photos taken shortly after Suzanne went missing, suggested a struggle. Barry attributed the marks to his outdoor work, but investigators were unconvinced. The discovery of a needle cap in the Morphews dryer, potentially linked to a tranquilizer dart, added to this. Barry admitted to using tranquilizer darts on deer, but denied any knowledge of why the cap would have ended up in the dryer. Despite these leads, the case against Barry remained circumstantial. He was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence, but the prosecution's case faced setbacks. Key pieces of evidence were excluded due to late disclosures, severely weakening the prosecution's position. On April 19, 2022, just days before the trial, All charges against Barry were dismissed without prejudice, allowing for the possibility of refiling. For over 3 years, Suzanne's whereabouts remained a painful mystery until September 22, 2023, when a search team discovered human remains in a remote area. The El Paso County coroner confirmed the remains were Suzanne Morphew's 5 days later. This discovery brought a bittersweet semblance of closure to her family, who had held out hope amid the anguishing uncertainty. But still, questions linger. The search for truth continues, with investigators continuing to piece together the final hours of Suzanne's life. Number 13. Johnny Cashman. In the quiet town of Lynchburg, Virginia, a family from Maine found themselves drowning in a nightmare. Grappling with the sudden and mysterious death of their beloved son and brother, Johnny, the Cashmans were desperate for answers. When Johnny was found deceased, the authorities had swiftly concluded that his death was due to a medical condition, a diagnosis that left the Cashmans reeling. With heavy hearts, they had Johnny cremated, trusting the police's assessment of his passing. But Johnny's sister Sarah's world shattered when she stumbled upon a shocking revelation that challenged the official narrative. The discovery was hidden in pictures and surveillance footage that painted a vastly different picture of Johnny's final moments. He is seen on his neighbor's Ring doorbell footage entering his apartment. A while later, a voice, presumably Cashman's, is heard saying, "What are you doing, man?" He says, "Stop, please." A struggle can be heard. And then, a strange man is seen leaving Cashman's apartment. After getting to the bottom of the stairs, he turns around and returns to Johnny's doorstep, checking the door. He appears to be wiping his fingerprints off of the doorknob. As Sarah delved deeper into the events leading up to her brother's demise, she uncovered a trail of negligence and oversight by official investigations. The family was assured there was no sign of foul play, no indication of violence or malice in Johnny's untimely passing. But this evidence, along with blood spatter evident on the walls at the scene of Johnny's death, suggests otherwise. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah has refused to accept the explanations offered by the authorities. She has reached out to anyone who will listen, leaving no stone unturned. Her pleas have fallen on deaf ears as the authorities remain tight-lipped, unwilling or unable to provide the closure the Cashmans so desperately seek. And so, the mystery of what happened to her brother remains. Any information regarding Johnny Cashman's case can be directed to Detective Doobie at 434-455-6102. Number 12. Machete-wielding lady. On a Friday night in July of 2023, in Anfield, Liverpool, England, Susan Blackburn lay awake in bed with an uneasy feeling she couldn't explain. The night had been almost unnaturally quiet, until a jarring bang downstairs broke through the silence. Like an alarm, her dogs erupted into barks. Susan's heart raced as she climbed out of bed, moving cautiously towards the source of the sound. Her 2 daughters were sound asleep in their rooms. She tiptoed downstairs, the barking dogs following her closely, their ears perked and eyes wide. Susan scanned the rooms downstairs, searching for the source of the noise, but everything seemed in place. Puzzled, she attributed the sound to something mundane, a dropped item, or perhaps a gust of wind knocking something over. She tried to calm the dogs, then returned to bed, willing the disturbance from her mind as she fell back to sleep. It wasn't until the next afternoon, at around 4 p.m., that Susan discovered the true horror of what had happened. She was in the living room when she heard the sound of a car outside. Instinctively, She reached for her phone to check her Ring doorbell app, expecting to see a delivery or a neighbor passing by. But the app wouldn't connect. Frustrated, she tried again, only to see a frozen image, her last recorded video. With a sinking feeling, Susan played the footage. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she watched the scene unfold. The video showed a woman, her face obscured by the hood of her jacket, walking up the driveway. In her hand, she held a large machete. Susan watched in horror as the woman approached the doorbell camera, raising the blade high. With a swift motion, she sliced the camera from its mount, the screen going black immediately after. Susan stared at her phone. The reality of what she had narrowly missed the previous night hit her hard. It was like something out of a horror movie, she later recounted to the press. I just couldn't believe what I had just seen. She recalled the bang she'd heard around midnight, the sound that had jarred her from her sleep. It hadn't been something falling inside the house after all. It had been a stranger doing something much more alarming. Susan shuddered at the thought of what could have happened if she had confronted the intruder. She checked the rest of the house for signs of a break-in, but found nothing amiss. The woman had taken the doorbell camera and vanished into the night. Susan immediately reported the incident to the police. The local neighborhood team responded quickly, identifying the weapon from the footage as a cane machete. A spokesperson from the Merseyside police urged anyone with information about the incident to come forward, emphasizing the importance of community vigilance. As the news spread, neighbors shared their own concerns. The incident left everyone on edge, each wondering if they might be the next target. Susan has installed a new doorbell camera and additional security measures, hoping to restore a semblance of safety to the family home. But the image of the woman with the machete remains vividly in her mind. The machete-wielding lady has never been captured, and her motive remains unknown. Number 11. The WOW signal. Wow. Astronomer Jerry Eamon wrote in the margins while reviewing the printout of a narrow-band radio wave that lasted 72 seconds. A radio wave that would soon spark theories ranging from extraterrestrial communication to stellar phenomena. Captured on August 15, 1977, at Ohio's Big Ear Radio Observatory, the WOW signal has fascinated scientists and the public alike for over 4 decades. Eamon was reviewing data a few days after the signal was detected and was so astonished by its clarity and strength that he scribbled the exclamation that gave the signal its name: "Wow." It was unlike anything seen before or since during searches for extraterrestrial intelligence. Despite numerous theories, the signal's origin has remained a mystery, perhaps until now. Intriguing new evidence from former U.S. Department of Defense analyst and adjunct astronomy professor Antonio Paris suggests a solution to this astronomical mystery. In their research, Paris and his team discovered that 2 comets, P2008Y2 Gibbs and 266P Christensen, were crossing the area of the sky being monitored by the Big Ear Radio Observatory at the time the WOW signal was detected. They proposed that the signal was emitted by a hydrogen cloud accompanying one of these comets. This theory would also explain why the signal was never detected again. The comet and its hydrogen cloud had moved along its orbital path. Paris and his team took advantage of a unique opportunity to survey the sky around the constellation Sagittarius a second time, this time via a 10-meter radio telescope. They timed their observations to coincide with Comet 266P Christensen's passage through the same region. The results were striking. The signal emitted by 266P Christensen, along with those from 3 other comets, matched many of the characteristics of the original WOW signal. However, the original signal detected in 1977 was significantly stronger than what Paris's team observed. Paris explains this discrepancy by pointing out the difference in sensitivity between the 2 radio telescopes. The Big Ear radio telescope, with a sensitivity equivalent to a 52.5-meter dish, was far more powerful than the 10-meter telescope used by Paris's team. Additionally, comets lose mass as they journey through the inner solar system, meaning that Comet 266P Christensen would have been much larger and thus potentially emitting a stronger signal 40 years ago. Despite these compelling findings, Paris acknowledges that his hypothesis is not definitive. There remains a possibility, however remote, that the WOW signal could have been caused by another unidentified source. Still, his team's conclusions suggest that the 1977 WOW signal was most likely a natural phenomenon generated by a comet. Paris has published his team's observations and theories through the Center for Planetary Science, a non-profit organization where he serves as chief scientist. This unconventional publication route has sparked some debate in the scientific community, yet the findings are nonetheless drawing attention. This research opens up the fascinating possibility that the infamous WOW signal, once a potential sign of extraterrestrial contact, may have actually been the result of a comet passing through our neighborhood. Number 10. The Miracle of Alcides Moreno. On December 7, 2007, in the heart of New York City, an event both tragic and miraculous unfolded. An event that would capture the attention and imagination of many. Alcides Moreno, an Ecuadorian immigrant, and his younger brother Edgar, both window washers, faced a life-altering moment that day. Their work for citywide window cleaning often involved suspending themselves precariously high over Manhattan's bustling streets. This particular morning found them at Solo Tower, a towering 47-story apartment building on the Upper East Side. They stepped onto their 16-foot-long, 3-foot-wide aluminum scaffolding platform, a routine beginning to their day's work. However, what happened next was anything but routine. The scaffolding's anchors, meant to secure the 1,250-pound platform, catastrophically failed. In a terrifying 6 seconds, Alcides and Edgar plummeted 472 feet to the alley below. Edgar, 30 years old, was tragically killed upon impact, his body discovered amidst the mangled wreckage of the scaffolding. The loss was immediate and devastating. But alongside the tragedy, a near impossible twist of fate occurred. Alcides Moreno was found alive. Miraculously, he was sitting up, conscious and breathing amidst the debris. Paramedics, recognizing the severity of his condition, performed a scoop and run to rush him to the nearby New York Presbyterian Hospital, Weill Cornell Medical Center. Alcides' survival was nothing short of miraculous, defying the grim statistics surrounding falls. Globally, falls are a leading cause of accidental deaths, with the United States alone recording over 32,000 fall fatalities annually. They are the second most common cause of accidental deaths worldwide, just behind vehicle accidents. The event reignited discussions about the dangers of falls and the unpredictable nature of such accidents. While falls from great heights are rare, Their impact is often devastating, and the Moreno brothers' case was a reminder of this reality. At the hospital, Alcida's condition was critical. He had suffered multiple fractures, internal injuries, and a serious brain injury. The medical team initiated emergency surgery right in the ER, a decision based on the precariousness of his state. Over time, he underwent 15 more surgeries and was in a coma for several weeks. The road to recovery for Alcides was long and fraught with both physical and psychological challenges. The psychological impact of falling, often overlooked, can be as significant as the physical injuries, not to mention the trauma associated with losing his brother in the same incident that almost cost him his life. Alcides' miraculous survival led many to speculate about the factors that may have contributed to it. Some suggested that his position on the scaffolding during the fall might have been a contributing factor. They wonder if he may have been lying flat, which could have distributed the impact more evenly across his body. Others pointed to sheer luck or divine intervention as explanations for the extraordinary outcome. In the aftermath, Alcides received a substantial settlement from the scaffolding company, Tractel, after a court found them negligent in the scaffolding's installation. The amount was undisclosed, but was known to be significant. Number 9. Michaela Bali, on the morning of April 12, 2016, in Yorkton, Saskatchewan. 16-year-old Michaela Bali was going through her usual routine, unaware that this day would mark the beginning of a mystery that still haunts her family. Michaela was a shy and quiet girl, known for her love of the violin and her involvement in her high school's drama club. Her mother, Paula, had noticed Michaela's recent strides in confidence, making the day's events even more baffling to her loved ones. Michaela's day started at home, where her grandmother drove her to school, arriving between 8:10 and 8:20 a.m. CCTV footage captured her putting a binder in her locker at 8:21, before she exited the school through the back entrance at 8:30. This decision to leave school so early was the first sign of the unusual path Michaela was about to take. After leaving school, Michaela's movements were pieced together through hours of surveillance footage and witness accounts. At 8:40 a.m., she was seen at Terry's Pawn and Bargain, attempting to pawn a silver ring, but the young woman left without making a deal. Minutes later, she was at the local TD Bank, withdrawing $55 from her account. From there, she headed to a nearby Tim Hortons and Wendy's restaurant. The cameras inside the restaurant recorded her buying a drink and sitting alone at a table. She appeared to dismantle her phone and then reassemble it, puzzling behavior that hinted that something wasn't quite right. Over the next few minutes, she left and re-entered the restaurant multiple times, her movements increasingly uneasy. Around 9:10 a.m., Michaela left the restaurant and circled the block, returning at 9:49 a.m. She sat at another table, using her phone repeatedly. She sent a text message to a friend at 10:12 a.m., stating, "Hey, I need help," only to follow it up with, "Never mind, I figured it out." At 10:43 a.m., she struck up a brief conversation with an older woman, asking for help renting a hotel room, which the woman declined. Michaela then left the restaurant for the last time. This was the beginning of the most troubling segment of her day, as her next movements were only partially captured. Cameras later showed her walking west on Broadway Street East, then briefly down 7th Avenue, before returning to Broadway Street East. At approximately 11 a.m., she inquired about bus schedules at the local STC bus depot, but the next bus to Regina wasn't until 5 p.m. She left without buying a ticket. By 11:59 a.m., she had returned to her school and briefly met with friends in the cafeteria, claiming she had plans to travel to Regina. After leaving school at 12:03 p.m., Michaela was seen at the Trail Stop restaurant, part of the bus depot, where she had lunch. She was last spotted between 1 and 1:45 p.m. at a nearby bus stop. The security footage from this area provided the last known images of Michaela, who then vanished without a trace. Despite extensive searches, interviews, and media coverage, no definitive clues about Michaela's fate have emerged. Her disconcerting behavior on the day she disappeared only added to the mystery. Her phone was turned off the next morning, and her social media accounts went silent. She simply seems to have vanished. Any information about Michaela's case can be directed to 306-641-9436. Number 8. The disappearance of Ray Gricar. Center County, Pennsylvania is a relatively rural swath of land that contains at its core the busy main campus of the Pennsylvania State University. On April 15, 2005, in this unlikely setting, a troubling mystery unfolded. Ray Frank Gricar, a respected and experienced district attorney, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. Ray Gricar grew up in the city's Collinwood neighborhood. He pursued a legal career. Known for his quiet demeanor, intelligence, and dedication, Gricar eventually settled in State College, Pennsylvania. Here, he embarked on a successful career, being elected as the district attorney of Center County in 1985. Gricar would go on to serve multiple terms before announcing his plan to retire in 2005. Gricar had recently started a relationship with Patty Fornicola, an employee in his office. They shared a home in the charming town of Bellefonte, just a few minutes away from State College. In the days leading up to his disappearance, Gricar's behavior raised no significant concerns, although he did express an interest in learning how to wipe his laptop's hard drive, a request not entirely out of context for a retiring DA. On the fateful day of his disappearance, Gricar took a half-day off and went for a drive along Route 192 towards Lewisburg, a routine he often indulged in to clear his mind. He called Patty at 11:30 a.m., informing her of his whereabouts and letting her know that he wouldn't be home to feed their dog. As the day turned into night, with no sign of Gricar returning, Patty's concern grew. She filed a missing persons report approximately 12 hours after their last conversation. The most significant discovery came the day after his disappearance. Gricar's car was found in a parking lot across from an antique mall in Lewisburg, 45 miles from his Bellefonte home. Inside the locked vehicle was his turned-off cell phone, but missing were his laptop, keys, and wallet. Searches like how to fry a hard drive and water damage to a notebook computer were found on his home computer. Strangely, cigarette ashes and the scent of smoke were found in his car, despite Gricar being a non-smoker. The case took an eerie turn when in July 2005, Gricar's laptop was found in the Susquehanna River, with its hard drive discovered separately. The hard drive was too badly damaged to recover any data, deepening the mystery. Gricar's disappearance bore a haunting resemblance to the fate of his brother Roy, who, shortly after his retirement, went missing and was later found dead in a river, in a case ruled as a suicide. However, there was no evidence suggesting that Ray Gricar had experienced depression or thoughts. Various theories have surfaced over the years. Some speculated that Gricar chose to start a new life elsewhere, possibly influenced by the case of Mel Wiley, a police chief who had disappeared in circumstances that led investigators to believe he had run away to start a new life. Others suggested he might have been a victim of foul play or had secrets that led to his disappearance. The possibility of a connection to the Jerry Sandusky child abuse case was also briefly considered, given Gricar's role as a district attorney, though this theory lacked substantial evidence. Intriguingly, in 2001, an unidentified man arrested in Utah momentarily raised hopes that Gricar had been found. However, this lead turned out to be a false alarm when the man was identified as Philip T. Beavers of New Mexico. Despite an exhaustive investigation, numerous leads, and a significant reward, the fate of Ray Gricar remains a haunting mystery. Though Gricar was declared legally dead in 2011, the case continues to baffle law enforcement and the public alike. The disappearance of Ray Gricar is a grim reminder of how even in a world brimming with surveillance and technology, some mysteries may forever elude explanation. Number 7. The disappearance of the Sodder children. 'Twas the night before Christmas in 1945, when George and Jenny Sodder and 9 of their 10 children went to bed, eager for Christmas morning to arrive. By 1 in the morning, their house was engulfed in flames. George, Jenny, and 4 of the children escaped, but the other half vanished in the smoke. George desperately attempted to find the 5 children still trapped inside, but the smoke was so heavy he couldn't see anything. He raced outside, thinking he could get in through a window upstairs with the ladder that was kept leaning against the house. But it was gone. Desperate, he planned to drive his coal trucks near the home to get to the windows that way. But neither truck would start, despite functioning perfectly the day prior. 5 children were trapped inside the inferno, and there was no way to save them. Meanwhile, Marion tried to phone the fire department at a neighbor's home, but there was no answer. Another neighbor also attempted to call, but again, no response. The neighbor took the initiative to track down Fire Chief F.J. Morris themselves, who began implementing the phone tree alarm system. Still, the firemen were too late. They did not show up until 8 a.m., by which time the Sodder home was totally destroyed, and the 5 children that were not accounted for were gone. George and Jenny assumed the children had perished in the fire, but strangely, no remains were found. Chief Morris theorized that the fire had been so hot that the bodies had been entirely cremated. Faulty wiring was cited by the state police inspector as the cause of the fire. Death certificates were issued by the coroner, citing fire or suffocation as the cause of death. Yet, the Sodders began to question things. George Sodder had lately had heated arguments within the Italian community in Fayetteville, particularly about Italian dictator Mussolini, to whom George was vehemently opposed. In recent months, strange occurrences had plagued the Sodder household. A passerby, who was a complete stranger, warned that their fuse boxes would cause a fire, despite recent inspections confirming their safety. An irate life insurance salesman threatened their home would burn and their children would perish because of George's anti-Mussolini remarks. A man was seen watching the children from a parked car. At 12:30 a.m. on Christmas morning, a strange phone call woke Jenny. An unfamiliar voice requested an unknown person, accompanied by laughter and the sound of clinking glasses. Jenny hung up, noticing the lights were still on downstairs. The curtains were open, and the front door remained unlocked. She turned off the lights, locked up, and went back to bed. She then heard a bang on the home's roof, and a noise like something was rolling. This was shortly followed by smoke seeping inside. Jenny questioned how there could be nothing left of her 5 children. Household appliances survived the fire. How had they withstood the blaze and nothing of her children? She conducted experiments with animal bones, burning them over and over, but always left with charred remains. A crematorium employee confirmed that when bodies are burned at 2,000 degrees for as long as 2 hours, bones still remain. The house fire lasted only 45 minutes before it was doused. A phone repairman later discovered the phone lines had not been burned, but rather cut. The lights in the home remained on during the blaze, despite the supposed electrical fire. A man was seen in the area with a block and tackle that could be utilized in the removal of car engines. Perhaps he disabled George's trucks. Near the home's ashes, the youngest child, Sylvia, who had escaped the blaze, discovered a strange rubber object, possibly a pineapple bomb. Could that have been what Jenny heard land and roll across the roof? In the following weeks and months, several sightings of the children were reported. A woman claimed she'd seen them in a car during the time the fire was burning. Another claimed to have served them breakfast the next morning. A hotel witness claimed to have seen them with Italian-looking adults a week later. The FBI was contacted, but couldn't intervene without local authorities' approval, which was denied. Private investigator C.C. Tinsley found that the insurance salesman who had made the threats towards George was on the coroner's jury. Fire Chief Morris reportedly found a heart in the ashes, later identified as beef liver. Rumors spread that he planted it to pacify the family. The Sodders bought a billboard and offered a reward for information. In 1968, they received a photo of a man resembling Lewis, one of the missing children, with a cryptic note. They hired a detective, who vanished. George died in 1968, still seeking answers. Jenny wore black until her death in 1989, maintaining hope. Sylvia, who was only 3 when this all began, continued to engage with crime sleuths online until her death in 2021, still seeking closure for the mystery that began on that fateful Christmas morning. Unfortunately, this is one mystery that may never be solved. Number 6. Amber Tuckerow. In the quiet moments of her day, Vivian Tuckerow is haunted by the memory of her daughter, Amber, who fell victim to a mysterious crime when she was just 20 years old. Amber's disappearance tore a hole in her family's lives, leaving behind a devastating scar. Amber had been a mother herself, leaving behind her son, Jacob, who was just a baby when his mother vanished. It was August 18th, 2010, when she was last seen in Nisku, Alberta, just outside of Edmonton. She had arrived with Jacob and a friend, planning to stay in the area for a few days. But Amber's excitement had led her to hitchhike into the city that very night, a heartbreaking decision that would change everything. She was last seen getting into a vehicle driven by an unknown man. When she failed to return, panic set in. Her friend called Vivian, who then reached out to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Weeks passed, and still there was no sign of Amber. Then, on August 28, 2012, a glimmer of hope, as the RCMP released a chilling recording of a conversation Amber had with the unidentified man, recorded after she had dialed emergency services. In the call, Amber is heard asking the man where he's taking her. She seems suspicious that he's lying to her, as they're headed on a gravel back road instead of into the city. She says, "You'd better not be taking me anywhere I don't want to go." In the final moments of the call, the man claims he is taking her to 50th Street, and she seems to accept this. The call ends. The release of this phone call was a desperate plea for answers, for any clue that could lead police to Amber. But answers never came, and on September 1st, 2012, just days after the audio was released, Amber's remains were found on a rural property near Leduc County. The discovery only deepened the mystery surrounding her disappearance, leaving Vivian to grapple with the identity of that unknown driver, the male voice on Amber's final phone call. The way the case was handled left Vivian feeling betrayed and abandoned. According to Vivian, the police had dismissed her concerns, downplaying Amber's disappearance and even removing her from the missing persons list after just 1 month. To Vivian, the dismissal of her daughter's case was just the latest in a long history of neglect surrounding the cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women in Canada and across the United States. Vivian fought tooth and nail to keep her daughter's memory alive, filing complaints, speaking out against the injustices she had faced. Like many cases of missing Indigenous women, the investigation surrounding Amber's case seemed to be deficient. Vivian traveled to Ottawa, joined by countless families who shared her pain and her outrage after losing loved ones themselves. Together, they demanded justice, a recognition of the lives that had been lost and the voices that had been silenced. In the face of unimaginable loss, Vivian remains a voice for the voiceless, and 13 years on, she continues to solicit tips on Amber's killer from the public. Any information about the murder can be directed to the Leduc RCMP detachment at 780-980-7267. Number 5. The Lead Masks Case. On August 20th, 1966, a young boy flying his kite made a startling discovery on Vintém Hill near Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. There on that hillside were 2 men, later identified as Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel José Viana, lying dead, dressed in suits and raincoats. What made the scene particularly eerie were the thick lead masks covering their eyes. The police investigation began a day later, though it was hindered by the remote location. Investigators found a series of perplexing items: a cryptic note with instructions about taking capsules at specific times, a water bottle, and 2 wet towels. The men, identified as electronic technicians from Campos dos Goytacazes, had left their hometown 3 days prior, supposedly to buy equipment for work. Their last sighting was in a bar, where witnesses described the pair as seeming anxious and their behavior as strange. Autopsies provided no clear cause of death, and no signs of violence were reported. Because of a delay in the investigation, reliable toxicology tests could not be conducted. Investigators began to look closer at the note, which referred to the consumption of mysterious capsules, and determined that the handwriting could be matched to neither of the deceased men. Over the years, various theories have emerged. One theory suggests they were involved in an illegal trade of radioactive materials and were murdered, leaving their bodies in a confusing state. Lead can help protect the human body against radiation, although no radiation was detected at the site or on the men's remains. Another theory, popular among UFO enthusiasts, proposes that they were following alien instructions, using the capsules and masks for protection against UFO radiation. However, a more credible explanation came from a friend who revealed that they were part of a scientific spiritualist group. The group, comprised largely of electronics experts, was known for conducting experimental activities. 2 months prior to their deaths, the deceased men had supposedly attempted to contact Mars using a homemade device. Further investigation into Miguel's workshop revealed tools and lead remnants used for making the eye shields. A book found there contained passages about intense luminosity, possibly explaining their reason for utilizing the masks. The prevalent use of psychedelic drugs at the time suggests that they might have died from a drug-induced experience. This theory offers a plausible explanation for their mysterious end on Vintém Hill, though the case remains unsolved and continues to intrigue. Number 4. Screaming for help. At around midnight on November 12, 2019, the area surrounding the 3000 block of 3rd Avenue in Los Angeles was about to be jolted awake. The cause? A chilling sound that no one could ignore. A woman's desperate blood-curdling screams for help. "Help me! Someone help me!" she was heard screaming. The sound was so intense, so raw, that it sent shivers down the spine of anyone who heard it. Within moments, calls flooded the Los Angeles Police Department, with residents describing the urgency. One of the key pieces of evidence came from an outdoor home surveillance camera. The LAPD released footage captured by a camera on the front porch of a nearby home, owned by a woman who had been standing on her porch when the screams started. The camera's audio was clear, capturing the terror in the screaming voice. But what was even more alarming was what the video showed next: a car speeding away from the scene. Initially, the vehicle was thought to be a Toyota Prius, but further analysis suggested it might actually be a 2003 to 2008 Toyota Matrix. The video showed the car tearing down the street, its headlights blurring into the night as it vanished from sight. The woman on the porch was shaken. She had witnessed something she couldn't quite process. The footage showed her looking towards the direction of the screams, her face full of confusion. Her testimony was crucial. She described a four-door white vehicle with plastic wrap over the front passenger side window, possibly from a previous accident. In the front passenger seat, she saw a woman with dark braided hair being pulled backward by an unseen assailant. The witness descriptions matched the audio. The suspect, a black male, was heard frantically apologizing, his voice tense and desperate. I'm sorry. The victim, described as a black female, was clearly in distress. As detectives scoured the area and reviewed missing persons reports, they were met with a flood of tips. However, identifying the woman from the chilling audio proved difficult. There were several missing people in the area, but none of their circumstances or descriptions seemed to match the specifics of this incident. The LAPD worked tirelessly, comparing witness testimony to their database, hoping to find a match that could lead them to the woman's identity. The public was urged to help, with the LAPD releasing multiple statements and updates, emphasizing the seriousness of the situation. The lack of clear leads was frustrating, but the urgency never wavered. News segments ran the story repeatedly, the haunting screams playing on a loop. As the investigation continued, the LAPD made it clear that they were considering all possibilities. Was it a kidnapping? A domestic incident gone horribly wrong? Or something else entirely? Some have speculated that the incident may have been a hoax, but most believe that there is no evidence to indicate that. To this day, no answers have ever been found. Any information about the incident can be directed to LAPD Southwest Division detectives at 213-485-2197. Number 3. The Oakville Blobs. In August 1994, Oakville, Washington, a town built on the timber trade, experienced a bizarre phenomenon when gelatinous blobs, each roughly the size of a grain of rice, reportedly poured from the sky and were found scattered across the ground. A local resident reported that these mysterious translucent blobs had rained down in the night. Soon after, she and her mother developed flu-like symptoms, which they attributed to contact with the blobs. And this was just the beginning. The next few weeks saw 5 more incidents afflicting the town, with multiple residences claiming illness after exposure to the goo. Intrigued and concerned, a microbiologist from the Washington State Department of Health examined the blobs, discovering they contained 2 species of bacteria. However, There was no clear indication that these bacteria might cause illness. Speculation about the origin of the blobs ran wild. Some proposed that they were the result of classified military experiments, though there was no evidence to back this. Another theory suggested that jellyfish could have been shredded and swept into the stratosphere by U.S. Air Force exercises over the nearby Pacific Ocean. This theory, too, lacked credible evidence. An alternative explanation considered the possibility that the blobs had not, in fact, fallen from the sky, but had appeared on the ground through natural processes. Similar substances, known as star jelly, have been recorded in scientific literature and poetry for centuries. These gelatinous substances have been attributed to various sources, including algae, amphibians, slime molds, and even sodium polyacrylate crystals, which are used in agriculture. In 2012, a similar occurrence was reported in Bournemouth, England, where sodium polyacrylate crystals absorbed water from a storm and formed gelatinous blobs. This incident suggests that the Oakville blobs might have had a similar origin, pointing towards a natural rather than an extraterrestrial or military explanation. Whether a rare meteorological event or an everyday chemical reaction, the blobs have left a lasting impression on Oakville's history. Number 2. Meta Valentine. Meta Valentine was last seen on October 28, 2014. The surveillance footage from that night shows 42-year-old Meta, a choir director and secretary at Deliverance and Praise Church of Worship, walking briskly towards her apartment at the Sycamore Park complex off Old Wilmington Road. She had just attended a community watch meeting and seemed in a hurry to get home. Approaching the complex, she stopped, staring at the parking lot for a few seconds, then broke into a run toward her building. As she turned the corner, a man exited a vehicle in the parking lot and pursued her. The man was later identified by police as Reginald Jamal McDowell, Meta's ex-boyfriend. The next day, Meta was reported missing when she failed to show up for a family event. The Fayetteville Police Department's homicide unit immediately suspected foul play and took over the investigation. Despite the lack of a body, investigators maintained their belief that McDowell was involved. He was initially cooperative with the police, but then he vanished, and with him, so did any hope of finding Meta alive. For years, Meta's family lived in a state of limbo, their hopes of finding their loved one repeatedly dashed. McDowell, a man with a violent past, had a history of terrorizing Meta. In 1999, he kidnapped Meta from her home, along with her then-boyfriend, Kenneth D. Thompson. Thompson was tied up, and locked into the trunk of Meta's car. McDowell was later charged with 2 counts of first-degree kidnapping, 1 count of first-degree burglary, and 1 count of shooting into an occupied vehicle. After serving 10 years of his 15-year sentence in prison, McDowell was released in 2011. As often happens with abusive relationships, Meta and McDowell began seeing each other again after his release, but she ended it once again on October 16, 2014, just 11 days before her disappearance. Then, on February 9, 2024, a breakthrough. Investigators received new information that led to warrants being issued for McDowell's arrest on charges of first-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping. Despite the issuance of warrants, McDowell remained elusive. He was believed to be hiding in the New York City area. The police urged McDowell's friends and family to convince him to hand himself over, stressing that he was considered armed and dangerous. Mehta's family, who had waited almost a decade for justice, clung to the hope that McDowell would be caught. They remembered Mehta as a devoted mother and a source of light and happiness in their lives. Her absence was a void. Only justice could fill it. As the search for McDowell intensified, the police released the surveillance footage to the public, hoping that someone might recognize McDowell and provide a tip that could lead to his capture. The video showed Mehta's final moments, the sudden terror as she realized she was being followed, and the desperate sprint for safety that she never reached. The image of McDowell chasing her was grainy but unmistakable. The Fayetteville Police Department has worked tirelessly, following leads and reaching out to law enforcement agencies in New York. The public was reminded of the danger McDowell posed and the importance of bringing him to justice. For Mehta Valentine, a woman who had dedicated her life to her family and her faith, justice is long overdue. Her family's grief is compounded by years of uncertainty, but they remain hopeful that McDowell will be found and held accountable. And yet, as of 2024, Reginald McDowell's location remains unknown. Any information regarding Mehta Valentine's case or the whereabouts of the suspect can be directed to Detective M. Ballard at 549-7326 or Crime Stoppers at 483-TIPS-8477. Number 1. The Ghost Ship of Northumberland Strait. The Ghost Ship of Northumberland Strait is a legendary phantom ship, sightings of which have been reported for over 2 centuries. The earliest recorded sighting dates back to the late 18th century, but it is the numerous accounts from the 19th and 20th centuries that have truly cemented its place in maritime folklore. According to various records, the ghost ship appears as a stunning 3-mast schooner, ablaze with glowing lights, or entirely engulfed in flames. Witnesses have reported seeing it sailing swiftly through the strait between Prince Edward Island and New Brunswick, Canada, particularly during stormy weather or before a storm. Despite its vivid and terrifying presence, attempts to approach the ship have always resulted in it vanishing into thin air, leaving no trace behind. There are several theories regarding the origin of this spectral vessel. One suggests that it is the ghostly reincarnation of a ship that caught fire at sea, with all hands lost, forever doomed to reenact its tragic end. Another theory ties the ship to historical naval battles, suggesting it could be the spirit of a warship destroyed in a forgotten conflict. Some believe that the ship could be a residual haunting, a phenomenon where a traumatic event is so powerful that it leaves an imprint on the surroundings, replaying itself over the years. Yet another theory suggests that it might be a harbinger of doom, appearing before major maritime disasters or in treacherous conditions to warn of impending danger. Despite numerous investigations and scientific attempts to explain the phenomena, no conclusive evidence has been provided to explain the sightings. Another theory, rooted in natural science, speculates that the sightings could be attributed to rare atmospheric conditions. Optical illusions such as Fata Morgana could project the image of a distant ship onto a layer of mist or fog, making it appear as if a burning ship is floating on the water. St. Elmo's fire, an electrical weather phenomenon, could account for the fiery aspect of the sightings, as it causes a visible glow, often appearing on the masts of ships during thunderstorms. A more folkloric explanation ties the ghost ship to local legend and maritime lore, suggesting that the ship is cursed or is a bad omen, appearing before disasters or as a warning to sailors and fishermen of the strait. This aligns with maritime tales from cultures around the world, where ghost ships often signify doom or carry the lost souls of mariners. As of today, The ghost ship of Northumberland Strait remains a mystery. It continues to capture the imagination of locals and tourists alike, with new sightings reported every few years. Whether it is a product of collective maritime folklore, a paranormal phenomenon, or an as-of-yet unexplained natural occurrence, the ghost ship remains an enduring legend of the Canadian Maritimes.